Congressman Gabe Amo of Rhode Island is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. He's the winner of our history-making special election back in November. He's the first black person to represent the Ocean State in Congress, and now comes the business of getting things done in D.C. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News 5's political reporter Sharman Sketty. It's great to see you this morning. It is Christmas Eve. Joining us at the table is the freshly minted U.S. Congressman Gabe Amo. As we mentioned, he represents Rhode Island's first congressional district, which includes
Pawtucket, Providence, Woonsocket, Newport.
Big heart of the Ocean State. Winning a special election last month. First black person to represent the Ocean State in Congress. He worked for the Obama and the Biden administrations and the administration of former Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo. He holds a degree in political science from Wheaton College, and this is his first Boston television interview. If you celebrate Christmas, have you done all your Christmas shopping already?
Absolutely not. There's not a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, right, because you're working.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Matter of hours at this point.
Exactly.
Great to have you with us. Thanks for coming in.
No, it's such an honor to be on with you and expand our reach to speak to our neighbors to the north. But I know so many Rhode Islanders tune in, so it's a pleasure to be on with you.
All right, well, let's talk about bridge trouble in your district. Two-way traffic is now moving over 195 West, but it was a real mess earlier this month when a section of the Washington Bridge was shut down for emergency repairs. The backups were so bad that school had to be canceled. I know you're just starting, but what are you going to do to get federal funding to help fix this bridge?
Well, first, it's unfortunate that so many Rhode Islanders and our friends from Massachusetts and others in the region had to deal with this unfortunate incident at a busy time of the year. Whether it's school pickup, commuting to work, holiday shopping, small businesses that we're visiting, it was a challenge. So what I'm doing is what I've always done. I was previously at the White House in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, and when a crisis arose, I picked up the phone and started working it. And so I reached out to Secretary Buttigieg, reached out to Administrator Guzman at the Small Business Administration. So what we have the opportunity to do now is to support some of our small businesses who have been negatively impacted with low interest loans and other support.
Let's talk about the actual federal funding. I mean, do you expect that this will be coming to the area? And do you believe it'll be spent wisely?
Well, I think they have to do a broad analysis of the situation to make sure that the response is appropriate and meets the specific needs that exist. And so I will be advocating, along with my colleagues in the delegation, for every dollar if that need presents itself.
That bridge itself was apparently inspected last summer. So it's amazing that perhaps that the break wasn't noticed then. But the governor is conducting an investigation. Is a congressional investigation necessary?
Well, I don't know if it gets to that level, but we have to start with the state. And I'm glad that the governor is pursuing that because sunlight is a good thing. We need to make sure that we understand the inspection history and also know that nothing, nefarious was done along the way. And so I think that's important. As far as congressional, I don't know if it rises to that level now, but I'm happy to add my voice if that becomes necessary.
Since it was inspected, though, in the summer, and you've seen the extent of the damage, does it raise a red flag, say, was this missed in the inspection process?
Certainly. There are a lot of questions and not a lot of answers right now, so we have to get to them. And so
what are the questions you have?
My question is similar. Like, what was the inspection history? What is the general maintenance process? Right. And do the appropriate people along the chain of command have the information they need to make sure that officials know how to act?
So let's move on to the next topic. Katherine Clark, who is a Massachusetts congresswoman. She's a Massachusetts Democratic House Whip. You're the new kid in town. How are you two working together?
Well, I am a big fan of Katherine Clark. Like her, I won after a special election, and she took office in December 2013. I took office in November of 2023. So she has been a guide for me in navigating not only the House, but how to be an effective legislator. She's a model for that. And I would add, so many in the Massachusetts delegation have done a remarkable job in welcoming me to the chamber, but also making sure that we're acting as a region.
Can Democrats take back the House in 2024? What do you think?
Most certainly. I think we've got the complete contrast against a Republican House leadership that is doing nothing to lower costs, to improve people's lives, to address some of the biggest challenges we have today as it relates to Ukraine, while Democrats want to get to work. And we have a good crop of candidates who are going to help us get that done.
All right, we want to get to that. When you get back to D.C. next month, there will be another funding fight amongst the government. Speaker Mike Johnson still looking for budget cuts. Aid to Ukraine and Israel, that is being held up right now. How will you navigate this, and where do you stand on aid to Ukraine and Israel?
Well, I think we need to stand with Ukraine in this fight for democracy. It is very clear that in the House of Representatives, we have a pro-Putin caucus that is working actively against what I think is a sentiment of the majority of the House and the Congress to support this fight for democracy, because it's really important that people know that Russia is on the border of NATO, and if there is a further incursion, that impacts our troop presence in the region.
What about aid to Israel?
Yes, I support aid to Israel. Israel is our ally. It is incredibly important that we root out the terrorism of Hamas. What happened on October 7th, which Hamas has pledged to do over and over again, should never happen again. Though we also have to be mindful of our humanitarian imperative.
Only 27 laws were passed by this current Congress in 2023. How confident are you that anything will get done in 2024?
Well, look, I think as the new kid on the block, I would tell you that I know that we have to keep making the case to Americans, whether or not the Republicans acquiesce to actually getting stuff done, so that when there is a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, that we are able to put forward a robust agenda to lower costs, to fight for democracy in the world, and make sure that we have a government that is working to make our Congress function.
Did I hear you correctly? Did you say you believe there's a pro-Putin caucus in Congress?
I do believe there are some members who are actively working against the interests of supporting our mission in Ukraine, and we've seen it continually. This should be very clear. Our American values are on the line. We need democracy to thrive.
But it's to the level of pro-Putin, do you think?
Well, look, they may not have a name brand, they may not have a sticker, but it's very clear that some people are working against that effort.
Let me ask you about, what do you think about the Colorado Supreme Court banning Donald Trump from the primary ballot in that state?
Well, look, it didn't take a Colorado Supreme Court ruling to let me know that Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. He has worked actively against our democracy. Moreover, I think Americans deserve so much better, and that's why I know that President Biden will be reelected. So whether or not that Supreme Court ruling, has the effect of kicking him off the ballot, I know that we do have one test, and that's next November.
Chris Christie and Nikki Haley, at least publicly, have said that the court should not make a decision. Should the Supreme Court have the final say in this, do you think?
Well, ultimately, I think they will make that decision. I believe in the co-equal branches of government, so we'll defer to them on that. But what I will say is very clear. Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. The extreme MAGA Republicans and what they have put forward has not been about progress. It's only been about moving us back, and we need to turn the page.
All right, former President Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, he's an election denier. He is up for induction into the statewide Hall of Fame in Rhode Island, and it is causing controversy in your home state, with Democrats saying they're not going to attend. Would you attend?
No, I would not attend. I worked to elect President Biden. I was a senior leader on his campaign, and I also was a senior leader in the White House. I worked very hard to reverse the damage done by people like Michael Flynn and MAGA Republicans. So I stand pretty clear against any honoring of that type of destructive behavior to our country.
Speaking of President Biden, as you mentioned, and we mentioned in the bio, you work for the president. His approval ratings are low. Should he be the Democratic Party's nominee?
Yes, he should. There's something that's often said in politics: polls go up, polls go down. But you focus on the mission. He has a clear record of pulling our economy back from the brink, of combating COVID-19, of an infrastructure bill to rebuild our roads.
Why do you? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but why do you think that's not sort of that message isn't getting out to people?
Well,
his approval ratings are at at record lows.
Yeah. He sometimes says this, and I agree with it. Sometimes in our politics, we compare him to the almighty and not to the alternative. All right? And I truly believe that when Americans take the moment, because we're busy right now, we have a lot going on, take a moment to look at the record, look at the achievements, we will see a president who has made historic investments in our nation, and that is only making us stronger.